And welcome back to Coast. And tonight we're going to talk about a topic that could startle you. Of course, it's alien abductions, that phenomenon. But it gets deeper because there is growing evidence, startling evidence, of human mutilations that could be tied to this. In a moment, Butch Witkowski joins us. We're going to be talking with him about this topic and some others on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest tonight, Butch Witkowski. He's been an independent researcher since 1989 when he and four others witnessed a UFO of just about unbelievable size hover over a mountain in Tucson. Witkowski then joined MUFON in 2007. It gave him more access to cases and on-site investigations. He then went up the field, literally, as a field investigator, a state section director, a chief investigator for the Pennsylvania MUFON. After relinquishing his position as the chief investigator, he started his own UFO research center in Pennsylvania, and that brought him together with the best-liked minds of researchers and consultants, and he's done a great job. Butch, welcome back to Coast. It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, sir. How are you? How have you been?
Good. I'm doing well. All is well. And what a subject matter, indeed. This interest of yours, of course, growing from the UFO site, I suspect you were probably interested in it even before that.
It kind of started out as just really looking into the abduction phenomenon. I was asked to do a speech at a conference on abduction, and although I knew a little bit about it, I really wasn't that well versed. So I really started looking into it, and then about halfway through, I realized that, so how many people can be missing? You know what I mean? What are we talking about, 300 or 400 people a year? So I went into NCIC statistics page, which is the FBI National Crime Information Center. Every police department in the country, big, small, large, doesn't matter. They put in every crime that they have during that particular year, and then that's listed. That's how they keep track of stuff. So I went in and looked at missing persons.
Okay.
And in 2008, 778,000 people were reported missing as a true filed case. And approximately 95% of those are found, 75% are runaways under the age of 18, which is understandable. I wanted to leave home many times when I was a teenager. 20% are spousal abuse, then there's murder, elderly, walkaways, ransom.
Yes.
Will just walk off and never found again. So 5% are really never found in that number, which comes out to 38,908. But when
that's huge.
From 1991 to 2008, the number never changes. It's always 5% or just a little under, which brings a total missing reports of people to 13,861,000.
Oh, my God.
So, and those are people that there is no trace ever located. I mean, they're not heard from again. There's no bodies found. They're just gone. So, in 17 years, that's 40,790 some a year.
And it just keeps adding up then every year.
Every year. And like I said, it's uncanny because that number that's never found really doesn't change, but by a percent. It's either 4 or 5%.
What does the FBI say about this, Butch? Do they attempt to think it's some kind of heinous crime? Do they say anything about this?
Well, the couple calls we made, they basically say, they can only look so far, and they keep throwing up the majority are found, which is true. 95% of these people are located. Either their bodies are found, or somebody finds them somewhere, or they turn up somewhere at some time. But the one gentleman I talked to said that they're the ones that are never found. It's just they're never found, and they just basically don't exist.
It's like they fall into a portal and they're gone forever.
Yeah, exactly. So they really didn't have an answer for that. And I just got done with 2010, and the number changed by 1.6%.
That's all?
That's it.
So they stay pretty constant, don't they?
Yes, and that's very strange.
Yes, that is unusual. It's almost as if the number is so important for whatever's going on, which, of course, Butch will get into.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find, as an investigator, were there sources for you to learn, or did you have to learn from the school of hard knocks on this?
School Hard Knocks. Especially
that's what I thought.
Now, in ufology, it's, you ask one question and you get answered with 15 other questions. And then, you got to put up with the hoaxes. You got to put up with the reports that go nowhere. And it really gets tedious after a while. I retired from my job last year in January, so this is pretty much a full-time thing for me now. And I find it just as hard having more time than I did when I didn't have a lot of time.
And with your organization, the UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania, are there a lot of members there that work with you?
I have 4 that are just at their wits' end. They just keep going. There's no stopping them.
They've got to be puzzled, too, then, Butch, about these disappearances.
Yeah, but they really do come up with some good stuff. I was talking to one of my investigators out in the western part of the state the other night, and he's starting to look into ritual mutilations. He found some cases of mutilations, ritual-type mutilations, but they have some similarity to the human mutilations and cattle mutilations. Now, whether that's done specifically to gather somebody's information, to gather some of this information that they're getting off the internet on human mutilation or cattle mutilation and trying to just make it look like that is one thing, or if it's just strictly, some religious group or
right,
trying to do their thing. But that was something I never thought of looking at, ritual mutilations.
Yeah, and it does exist. I mean, there are some strange groups out there, Butch. That,
absolutely. There's
weird things.
Just a quick look. I came up with 50 in a 4-state area in the last 2 years.
Jeez. Could you call them serial killers?
Sure. Yeah. If they, these the folks that do these ritual murders are usually people that, are your Wayne Gracies.
Yeah. All right. So you are literally battling between the potential of UFO abductions, disappearances, mutilations that might be related to that, and then you've got these group of sickos out there that are doing what they're doing. How do you distinguish the difference, or can you?
Well, the best way to distinguish, the ritual murders from the couple that we had looked at, they're more of a butcher job. You know what I mean?
Literally.
How should I say? It's no finesse. When you look at the autopsy pictures of the Brazil case, the crime scene pictures, I mean, the marks that were made to remove organs were precise. They were identical in size. Certain organs were taken the same as cattle. The body presented like a cattle mutilation. And in the ritualistic killings, you don't see that. I mean, whatever the individuals using to do the human mutilations, which I believe are alien, the technology is far advanced. When you look at a cattle mutilation and you see an eye removed and it's a perfect circle, I mean,
with no blood around.
No blood, perfect circle. Just a precise incision. The same thing with the Brazil case, perfect incisions, anal areas cored out, and then you see a ritualistic killing where they've gone at it with a knife and an axe or whatever they've used. And it's way messy as opposed to way clean. That's the best way I can describe it.
Well, in the ritualistic killings, I think are almost done as torture, don't you, Butch?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, that's what they want to do. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you now.
Okay. All right, we don't want to lose you. So, but I was saying that the rituals are almost done as if they're torture.
Well, the Brazil case, this guy was, according to the autopsy report, this guy was alive when it was done to him.
Ugh.
The autopsy report on that case And, it gets a little crazy. So the term that came up a number of times, 7 to be exact, was vital reaction. And vital reaction really indicates the response of a living body tissue to injury. By definition, it really only occurs during life. So therefore, you have an index of antemortem injury. It's really important to forensic medicine because it establishes that an injury was inflicted before death. So it helps with the identification, and of time of when the death actually took place.
Now, because you're based in Pennsylvania, Butch, do you primarily relegate your work to that area, or are you all over the place?
We're everywhere. I've gotten today 5 cases, and from New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, Washington State, California, 2 cases from California, and 1 case from Poland.
Now, these cases that you have, what are they generally? Abduction cases?
They're generally people asking for help with research. Some are people trying to put a mutilation case together, but they're not doing very well at that. They're looking at a murder in the newspaper and trying to put that together with human mutilation, but it's not what it is. Most of their stuff is they're individual researchers, or they're researchers with other groups that aren't getting any answers, and they need some help with the research. And we'll research for anybody. I think the more that we can help and the more information we can help people gather, the more we're going to learn.
Well, Butch, though, if 35,000 people a year are just merely disappearing, and you believe it could be alien in terms of their disappearance, as far as the mutilations are concerned, why do they leave the body behind? Why don't they just take it? And
I think that's just pure arrogance.
So
the body's left there, and it's look, we can do anything we want to you. Here you are, end of story. I mean, this guy's corpse was. It's so unbelievable, when I first read the report, and it's been around for a while, but just nobody touches it. I mean,
right.
I got enough trouble touching it, and I still get some people that, just don't like the idea that I'm doing this. But I'm out to find out the truth, and I'm going to find it out, and I don't care what anybody says. And you have a guy here that's found on an island in the heat of Brazil. The body's dead, been laying there dead for 40-plus hours.
Oh, boy.
He's not bloated. He shows no remarkable signs of rigor mortis or livor mortis. I mean, he's fresh. He's not stiff. He looks like he was killed hours earlier, and the body was 40-plus hours old.
How do we know he was abducted there? Maybe he was picked up some other place and then just dumped.
He was from the area. Well, we did find out he was from the area of Sao Paulo, but he was not a fisherman. He did not own a boat. He didn't swim out to that island. The Guadaparanga Dam is a man-made lake that supplies water to Sao Paulo. And that's where he was found, right on the edge of a piece of the island by some fishermen that spotted the body from their boat. And luckily and thankfully, because if these guys would have done anything else, we'd probably never even be talking about this. But these guys went, and they didn't go to the body. They went to the police, and the police showed up with a forensic team. And the forensic team took the photographs, and there are so many people that say how these photographs got on the Internet, and really I don't care how they got on the Internet. The case was checked out. The names of the doctors were verified. The type of report that was the Brazilians put out, it is their type of report. It does have their seals on it. So it is a valid report. And the couple other cases that have popped up over time of mutilations are really hard to get information on. I think law enforcement has a predisposition that even if they would come over one of these cases or scenes, you're never going to know about it.
No. Which, has anybody been mutilated and left alive?
No.
Okay.
No, not that we've ever found.
Do we know the cause of death in some of these people?
Yeah, we know the cause of death as a massive trauma caused by vital reaction. Vital reaction, if you stab a live person, of course, they're trying to get away, they're pulling, they're tugging, they're backing up, they're going forward, so the wound, the area around the wounds tend to be black and blue and really nasty looking. If you stab a dead person, you just have a stab mark. That's it. There's no vital reaction. Vital reaction can only happen to a live person.
Okay.
So are these people being put under a trance and then mutilated, which takes you to, I can't remember the name of the horse. The name changes all the time. But there was a horse, a family horse that was found as mutilation. And the two researchers that were standing there, they're looking at this animal, and they're trying to decide what doesn't look right. And what doesn't look right is the tears after the mucous membrane and tears after the eyes were removed. Instead of the horse is laying on its side, and instead of the fluid and the mucus and stuff going off to the side of the horse, they ran down the horse's nose to the end, which meant that this had to happen while the horse was standing up.
And how many of these animal cases are there?
Hundreds. There's just the last ones I just saw were in Colorado. Chuck Zukowski is the guy for that. I mean, I've learned so much from him and his reports. It's amazing. I mean, he's really on it. And we haven't had any in Pennsylvania. We cannot locate one. We did have a hoax report of 200 pigs being mutilated, but after checking that out, that was nothing but somebody trying to get their name in the newspaper.
Well, you know, Dr. David Jacobs, Butch, has always believed that these alien abductions were very, very evil, that there's something here going on that's extremely sinister, and he may be onto something.
Oh, I think he's been onto something for a long time. I've read all his books. I've been to some conferences with him. I've spoken with him at conferences. He is probably, in my estimation, with the exception of Bud Hopkins and
John Mack,
probably one of the premier guys involved in human in the abduction series. You have Kathleen Martin and
I don't know. Is John Carpenter still doing this anymore? The fellow from Missouri?
Yeah, I think he is, although I haven't seen anything recent lately. Another person that's really involved in this abduction scenario is Denise Stoner. She's a chief investigator out of Florida. There are quite a few researchers that have really picked up and started to run with this. The only problem is, unlike UFOs, where we have databases. I mean, we have our own database. There's 6 or 7 databases you can go to on the Internet.
Sure.
There's no database for abduction. So, it's these little small groups all over the country that are trying to help these people out. And they sometimes only comprise of one person who's usually an abductee or a contactee. And then there's a few larger groups. But when I say larger, I only mean maybe 4 or 5 people. But I just wish there was a depository somewhere or a database that this abduction stuff could be put in there, because I think we would learn a lot more and possibly get some more leads on the human mutilation end of it.
That figure that you quoted, 35,000 disappear, is that just in the United States?
That's just the United States. I tried to find databases in other countries. South Africa, the Middle East and South Africa, they don't have any database for anything because, so how many people are missing where they don't have China? There's just no databases. Nobody really has anything like we do.
Not at all. Butch's website is paufosearch.com. We'll be back with more as we talk about this somewhat disheartening topic. Okay, here we go with Butch Witkowski as we talk about his work in the UFO abduction field. Butch, how did you get involved in the mutilation end of this? How did that happen?
Well, I was doing the research on the abduction, and I came upon this case in Brazil. And there wasn't much on the particular site that I found, but, I started really looking, and I found the whole case. And I looked at what some other researchers had said about it, and Just kept looking, and it started taking me to other cases, and then it just went from there.
What are members of
the latest case I can find is in 2005. The Brazil case was 88.
Okay, what do members of your group say about all this stuff?
Oh, they want answers too. I mean, there's no answer for what happened to this gentleman.
No, and so many others, I assume.
Yes, yeah, and that's why we're going to take a different tack and start looking at ritual mutilations.
Are the organs that are removed from animals the same as removals from humans?
Yes.
They're going after the same things, right?
Yep, reproductive organs, lymph nodes, anal areas, eyes, skin removal from the jaw. Typical cattle mutilation, only on a human.
Let's put the ritualistic one on the side for a moment. Mm-hmm. If they are extraterrestrial, mm-hmm. What do they want? What are they doing?
We've had a lot of response from people over the last few years on this, and some people say, well, they're taking the organs and they're making a mixture to rub on their skin because they can't breathe our air. And there's another group that says, well, they're taking the organs and it's food. And then there's another group that says, well, they're taking all these organs and they're making some kind of a serum that they can live in our atmosphere. There's just, it just abounds with ideas. But do we know? No, we don't.
Do we know if, for example, because there is no data on all this, if these victims, let's say, had cancer, all of them had cancer, and maybe they were testing them or something?
No, nothing like that.
We don't know, or
no, we don't know. I mean, the getting information. I'd probably have better luck finding out what's in President Obama's checking account than anything from anywhere on the internet or any agencies with human mutilation. I mean, it's just an absolute no-no. I mean, mainstream ufology just says, you stay away from the dark side. Well, I can't do that.
What percent of them, in your opinion, might be ritualistic? What percent might be ET related?
Alien?
Yeah.
I would probably say at this point, maybe a couple percent on the ritualistic.
Gosh, I would have thought that would have been higher. So that's not that high.
No, it's not.
This
they basically, from what we read, are copycat. The two cases I just read yesterday were copycat. I mean, they were trying to make it look as though it was an alien mutilation or a cattle mutilation.
Huh.
And drug involvement was there.
What do you mean by that?
The one body, the way the report stated, the gentleman's cocaine level was super high. So was this a drug-related killing? Like, in Mexico now the big thing is take a head off.
Right.
Or disembowelment. So although they could be classified as a ritual mutilation, we all know that they're drug-related. So, there's so many ways to go with this as far as these ritual mutilations. Are they a religious group? Is it a drug gang type of thing? Don't know.
But are you saying that the ritualistic mutilations are definitely done by human beings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because the human mutilation, and going again by the Brazil case, which we have the photographs of, everything is precise. I mean, it's just perfect. There's no ripping, tearing, gouging. I mean, eyes are removed and the eyelids are still there. An ear is removed and it's perfect. It's a perfect incision. I mean, there's no ripping or tearing. The holes in the body where lymph nodes and organs were removed were perfect 1 to 1.5 inch circles.
Butch, are there any witnesses? Do people see things? Do they see people? Do they see lights? Anything?
If there are, nobody's saying a word. It's such a closed, beating on the door and finding an empty room every time you go somewhere. With this, it's just there's been many times where I just thought, like, this is crazy. I'm getting nowhere. But then something else will pop up, and I just keep on trogging along.
Well, what keeps you driving for this?
That missing number of people.
Yeah.
Where are they?
You don't
that's
think
men,
they're
women, and children.
But you don't think that 35,000 number a year, you don't think that they've all been mutilated and dumped?
I don't think they've all been mutilated, but they're, where have they gone? Are they on some menu and heading to Pluto? Who knows? They're just not here. I just find that I just don't buy that 35,000 some hundred people are missing every year in this country alone, and nobody knows a thing. That's
so bizarre. I mean,
it's mind-boggling, and bizarre is a great word for that, because no matter what I try to do, I went state by state and looked at missing person reports, and they have some there from the 40s.
And the worst part about this, Butch, is the families don't get closure.
No closure.
No.
Nope.
That would drive me crazy, I think.
And if anything, I mean, if we could just nail something that could give somebody closure, if we could definitely say, oh, well, look, they've been abducted by aliens. No, they've been abducted by the slave trade. Anything. I'll take anything. Just let me prove something.
Are there any case studies of people who said, I was with him last night until 10 o'clock at night, and he walked down the street, and that was it for him?
We found a couple state reports like that. One was in Texas, where a guy was at a pre-wedding party with 9 people, and he went to his car, which was in a parking lot like 50 feet away from where they were standing, and they never saw him again.
And what about the car? Gone?
No, the car's there. Car was there. He's gone.
He's gone.
He's gone. Never been seen again. Happened in 1997.
Well, we could have more serial killers also running around this country.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think there's tons of those guys running around.
I think the FBI has estimated that there's, 50 to 100 at any given time. There could be more.
Yeah, I would probably think there's more. You get out in these remote areas of the country where people kind of live the way they want to live.
Yeah.
They make their own rules. It seems like just about every week they're digging up graves of 20, 30 people that they're finding here, there, and everywhere.
What kind of reaction do you get from people, Butch, when you talk about mutilations or abductions? I mean, do they take this seriously, or do they think?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I spoke out in Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas, at the Oz UFO, and after my presentation was done, I just had a number of people just come up and going like, They read the case, or they saw the case somewhere on the internet, and they said, "We believe this happens." And yeah, I believe it happened too.
I wonder, when we take phone calls, I wonder how many people know of people who are gone, just disappeared, and they don't know where they are.
I'll bet that would be a surprisingly high number.
It might be. It might be. Yeah. You consider that. There's 300 million people in this country, so 35,000 would be considered to some to be a drop in the bucket in terms of just a number. But when you talk about it as a specific number of people who merely just vanish, that's pretty high, I think.
Yeah, very high, because that number never seems to change. I mean, it's just like I said, it's 1% or 1.5% different.
Clockwork.
Over that time period.
It's like they need 35,000 people.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
They got a quota, and they got to fill that quota, and they're filling it.
And again, the disappearances are different than the mutilations, which apparently is a different number.
Yes. The reports of mutilations are so slim, and so they're so minute. I mean, that would be a drop in the ocean. But when you go year by year, I mean, if we were getting one mutilation a year, over the last 20 years, that'd be 20 people. I mean, we're talking about millions of people over a period of 10 years.
Would you ever want to be on the scene of one of these things, Butch?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just to for my eyes to just verify what I truly believe, and I truly believe that they're being done by folks not of this earth.
What?
Only because the way they're doing it is stuff we can't do today.
No, that's true. What does law enforcement say about this?
Nothing.
Are they baffled?
No, they're not baffled. That's just another report.
They're not even concerned about it?
Doesn't seem to be.
All right, now let's move over to the rituals for just a moment, because that's a realistic facet of all of this. But you said that's a small percent based on your understanding.
Yes, very small percent.
These ritualistic people are taking men, women, children, what?
Mostly women and children.
Okay. And when somebody is reported missing, how soon are they found with these mutilations?
Usually within days.
So it happens pretty quickly.
Found mainly in cemeteries or really remote areas, deserts, canyons, closed down farms, places where people don't normally go.
Right. Are the rituals, you think, being performed by an individual or by a group of people?
I think a group. It's because there's a lot of times there's candles all over the place. There's dead animals. We just had some here in a local county here in Pennsylvania where they found bags and bags of dead chickens and some dead dogs and cats, and there were candles lit up all over the place. A satanic group.
I was going to say, are they satanic worshipers generally?
Yeah, but when you really look at these satanic worshipers, most of them are not like that. I think that's just these groups that perform these animal mutilations and tombstone knockovers and stuff like that, or grave robbing, are a fringe of that group. A lot of the I talked to one not long ago, and she was a little concerned that people were putting the satanic groups with mutilations, and she's right.
I would mix them together, probably.
Yeah, but it's just like she said. She said, we're just another religion. We worship the earth and the water and the sun, and she said, of course, there are fringes that take it too far.
Yeah, well, that's true, too. Well, I've always told people that those people who practice witchcraft, Wiccans, that they're good people. They believe in God. They believe in a male-female version of God, but, they're just very spiritually, inclined people. But satanic people, black mass worshipers, Butch, I would categorize them as being very different, probably very evil.
Yeah, they seem to go to the beat of a different drummer. The area that I'm talking about in this county, close by, they've had these things happening since I was a kid in the same cemetery. I'm 65 years old. Okay. I remember as a kid, that cemetery being cordoned off by the local police department because they didn't want anybody in there. And they were doing that stuff back then. And the reason is they say that the older cemeteries is where you see more of that. And this happens to be a very, very old cemetery from the late 1800s.
So they perform a ritual, they dump the body.
Yeah.
Do they ever get caught?
Well, they just found 2 fetuses that were shipped in from overseas, and our people at Homeland Security caught them, got the box at the airport, and there were 2 dead baby fetuses in there that were headed for a voodoo worshiping service.
Oh.
So
I assume they've got the address of that service.
Oh, yeah.
It's on the package.
Some idiot put the right address on there.
Yeah, exactly. Duh.
But so that stuff, how much of that stuff don't we know about? How much stuff gets through that we don't know about? Are they shipping whole bodies or just body parts? Well, these just happen to be 2 fetuses.
Well, it would seem that it's frustrating for someone like you to try to ascertain if this is extraterrestrial in nature, which a lot of people would say is far out anyway, or if it's a ritual.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tend to lean more to the extraterrestrial only because of the way things were done to the gentleman in Brazil. I mean, that is such a well-documented case. It is unbelievable that it even ever was done, because there was a case, I believe, in Bliss, Idaho, where, when the investigator got there, the police were already predisposed of, a guy just walked out here in the desert and died. So,
and I believe, though, that the Brazil case, there was no blood there either, was there?
No, absolutely none. Nope. The only blood you see on the photographs at the crime scene are, just like a brush burn type of amount of blood.
Well, you've got a good website set up, paufosearch.com, where I assume, Butch, people can offer you feedback and insight into some cases. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah. They can. There's a contact us page. They can do that. One of us will call them back within 24 hours. Usually it's just a couple of hours. We get, I don't know, we average about 30 to 50 cases a month in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, only about 5% of those are really worth looking into. The rest are mainly hoaxes or just somebody wanting to help with some research.
Sure. The hoaxes, they've got to be frustrating.
Yeah, they get on your nerves. They just make you crazy. I had one guy that he had Bigfoot knocking on his front door while he was typing to me. And I said, look, you know something? Call the police. Is he still there? Oh, yeah, he's still there. Can you see him? Absolutely. Call the police.
Yeah. Or get a picture, something.
So, you get those kind of cases. And then we do a lot of historical research, like the Carbondale case, where the famous lantern went into the water.
Yeah.
And we proved that was a bunch of crap. I don't know what went in the water, but it wasn't that lantern. Well,
so you're looking at a lot of different paranormal episodes as well, though.
Oh, yeah.
Not just abductions. And
correct, yeah. UFO sightings, paranormal sightings, cryptozoology, anything that pertains to the strange and unusual.
I want to get your take when we come back, Butch, on 2012 as well, to see if you think anything's going on. I had a story last hour about a group, 200 people in France.
Oh, yes, I saw that.
Yeah, they think a UFO is going to come and gobble them up like Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, well, I hope they're ready for the sunburn.
Maybe they'll just disappear. You never know.
That could be.
Butch, we will be back with you in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Our special guest tonight, Butch Witkowski. We're talking about his UFO research. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And we're talking tonight with Butch Witkowski. He, of course, heads up the UFO Research Center of Pennsylvania. I'm going to do something a little differently with our phone calls tonight. First of all, those of you who know of someone who is missing, I'd like you to check in with us. I just want to know what's going on and how this thing all came about. And then, of course, we'll also take questions with Butch when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. Hey, Butch, before we get into calls, I've got to ask you about Thunderbird cases in Pennsylvania. I have always been fascinated with this creature. What do you have out that way?
There are a number of reports in Pennsylvania of Thunderbirds. Basically, what we've come down to is they're just misidentifying another type of bird. There have been California condors in Pennsylvania. They get in the jet stream and they just come on east.
And those are big birds.
Oh, yeah. And, you get somebody that's looking at a condor or even an eagle or a heron, and it's flying low overhead. It looks like a Piper Cub. And we did call, I called the Audubon Society, and I spoke to a gentleman there who's one of the curators and asked him how many reports they've had of, or sightings have they had documented of Thunderbirds. And well, after he got done laughing, he said, we've got over 500,000, probably closer to 1 million people out in the country that are ornithologists and high-powered binoculars and high-powered scopes and cameras, that can shoot a bird, 1,000 yards off. He said, we've never had one report.
Why do they laugh, though? I take all these things seriously. So do you, Butch.
Sure.
Why do these other people laugh about stuff like that?
I think it's just people's belief system. If you look at the totem poles from the Northwest, the birds on the totem poles always have large wings because they're fashioned after condors. And if you look at the Southwest, the wings are shorter, the faces are different, the heads are different. Eagles. You go to the Northwest in Canada, and again, eagles. Come east, herons. So the indigenous peoples were the ones that really brought forth. That was a big thing to them. That was a god. That brought them prosperity. That brought them happiness. It brought them war. I just really think that a lot of it's just misidentification. Because there's some of the reports we see, they're talking about birds that flew back in, thousands of years ago.
Well, maybe millions if they were pterodactyls, right?
Sure. One of the things we have a raptor study place up in above Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and that's all they study is raptors. And I talked to a guy up there, and he was saying, well, people say, well, it came down, it snatched the dog and cat, and well, he said, if it's a rabbit, he said that's very possible. He said if it's a fish, very possible. He said small dog, and he said I'm talking about small dog like Chihuahua. He said they're not picking up a Great Dane, and they're not picking up a human because they're not made to do that. Their claws can't hold that. They need all their strength in their wings just to fly. He said that's why they hunt from high spots. If you see an eagle, he's always sitting on a tree or high up in a tree looking down. Hawks, any raptor hunts from the air.
Right.
They don't hunt from the ground, and they're not. Their bodies are not made. Their claws aren't strong enough to pick anything of that weight up because they'd fall. They just fall out of the sky. So it's when I receive reports of people saying, "Well, it picked up my German Shepherd and carried him 300 feet and then dropped him." Well, okay, let's see the damage to the shepherd. Well, they can't come up with that. So I really do think it's just misidentification. It's great storytelling, though, and some of these reports are really intriguing. But then when you really start asking questions or looking around or digging, never found a feather, never found a carcass. It's just like we have here in Pennsylvania. Our Pennsylvania Game Commission says we have no cougars here. Well, they just had a cougar killed in Connecticut on the road. It was hit by an SUV. It was tagged in South Dakota.
They found out in a strange way. South Dakota. That's a long way.
Yeah. So this guy traveled a little over 1,500 miles, and there was a couple areas where they picked up his scat and tagged it to him. So we have reports of cougars. Of course, we have the Bigfoot reports. They're kind of few and far between. Thunderbird reports, very few of those. But I just think it's just misidentification. And even some of the Bigfoot reports that we've read, the guy says, well, I saw this big furry thing dart in front of me. Had to be a Bigfoot. Well, could have been a bear. Could have been a deer.
Could have been a deer as well. What's your take, Butch, as these calls are lining up here for you? What's your take on 2012? We've heard all kinds of things. Apocalypse, I believe maybe some kind of solar event. Yeah. Some people say nothing. How about you?
I say it's probably one of the greatest advertising things that ever happened. The guy that came up with all this is probably making a fortune. If you think back on YK2, I know a guy personally bought 5 generators for his family in YK2. Nothing happened.
He may be. Something may happen one day, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
he'll be ready
one day, but I don't think we're ever going to know it's going to come. And if an asteroid hits us, or it's going to be something we missed that's going to get us. The Mayan calendar. When I read books on the Mayan calendar about 2012, and you see people quoting Gene Dixon or the Great Kreskin, that makes you stop and think just for a second, and then you think of the rapture twice last year.
Yeah,
we're all going to be gone, and look what that caused. I mean, people were committing suicide. People were killing off their whole family. And then now the Mayan thing, I mean, you got survivalists that, they've got 10 years worth of food. Well, if it gets that bad, 10 years worth of food isn't going to help you out, because the people that find out that you have 10 years worth of food are coming to get it. But the Mayan calendar, there was just an article in a paper from Peru where two doctors, both scientists, studied the calendar under elders of the Mayan culture. And they said, well, this is the fifth time that it's happened in the history of the Mayan culture that the calendar is going to start all over again, which is really what is going to take place. One gentleman from, I believe he's in England, who also has been studying for many, many years, said that, well, actually, he said if you go by the day count, the Mayan calendar already ended. It ended in October 28th, because you had to switch over from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar. So
yes, some people believe that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, but for as many people as you believe nothing's going to happen, you have just as many believe that something's going to happen. So I'm on the side of, I don't think anything's going to happen other than that Mexico's going to have a real boon in their count of people coming to visit.
All right, we're going to take some phone calls now with Butch Witkowski, including, of course, stories if you know of somebody who has just disappeared, vanished. Check in with us as well. Let's pick it up by going to Kurt, and he's truck driving in California. Hey, Kurt, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
No, thank you, George. Hey, 2 nights in a row of missing people. You guys are creeping me out here on the road.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught last night. George Knapp did a 4-hour deal on missing people out of national parks. Just really scary night.
People just gone.
Yeah, I know. Can I digress before I ask my question about the 2012? I'm curious to know if the economy is not improving because people are so worried about December. Just something that I'd been thinking of. My question for the guest was, has he looked into folklore, maybe something along the lines of maybe a vampire?
What about some kind of myth or folklore, Butch?
Yeah, we have. We can't find anything. There are certain areas of the country that folklore just abounds, especially in the South, like areas of West Virginia, Tennessee, and you have the Mothman mysteries and stuff like that. But we really never found anything with vampires or werewolves or anything like that that came up with mutilations or bodies found. A lot of stories, but nothing of any concrete value. I just had an email a little bit ago when we were on our break of a person bringing up the djinn. Do I think the djinn has anything to do with it? I'm just about 3/4 way through Rosemary Ellen Guiley's book, a great book.
She's
and I don't really know enough about the djinn other than what I'm just reading. But something we'll look at. But I don't see the mutilation connection there or the disappearance. I did not get the show. Somebody told me about the show last night. I did not get the show about the missing people in the state parks. But we did find 2 cases like that, one in Arizona and one in Washington State, where both were gentlemen, one walking his dog. The dog went home, never found the guy again, never saw any signs of a struggle. They've been looking for this guy for like 3 years, and they found nothing. One in Arizona was a guy that studied plants or something in the Sonoran Desert and did it every day. I mean, he's a retired gentleman, went out every morning, and he just went out one morning and never came back again.
These are people who are in the wrong place, Butch, at the wrong time.
At the wrong time, yep. And whether it was an animal attack or they fell in a crevice or whatever the case may be, I mean, they're in that count that they're just gone, never found. So I think there's a lot of reasons.
In your cases, have you closed the books on a case yet with a definitive conclusion?
As to mutilation or as to a case in general?
A case in general.
Case in general, yeah. We closed the Carbondale case. We've closed the 2008 UFO flap in Pennsylvania. We closed Suscon Screamer. We closed. We closed so many I can't even think of them. We probably closed about 3/4 of a dozen.
And of those that you've closed, have you come to the conclusion of some kind of ET presence or involvement?
Most of them were just bad research. I'll go to the Carbondale, because Carbondale, for years, the guy that investigated Carbondale was actually the biggest skeptic of Carbondale. And when I first read that case on the Internet, never did anything but read it.
Was this Carbondale, Illinois?
Carbondale, Pennsylvania. This is the lantern case, where a lantern, something went into a mine strip pool, and it was witnessed by a group of teenagers standing on the corner. And they called the police. Well, the police don't show up for like 3 hours. Then when the police show up, the guy sees the light under the water and he starts shooting at it. I don't know what that's all about. Mm-hmm. But when the guy just was making a joke out of the whole thing, but it just didn't sound right. I mean, there were too many things that just were not right. So we went to the scene twice, took our samples, took our measurements, took our photographs, and then just by dumb luck through Kufos and Dr. Regier, I got his original report. Well, the original report is nothing like what he's saying, and then we really started pulling it together, and the report was just a big farce. I mean, when you read the report, or the skeptic part of it, that he puts on the Internet, the gentleman says that, he was there for hours and hours and hours doing all this and the other thing. In reality, he was only there for about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours, and he shows up 3 days after the fact. Well, let me tell you something. 3 days after the fact, I can hide the Empire State Building. You know what I'm saying? And then he's pulling this lantern out, and we checked the lantern. Matter of fact, I bought 4 of them. We got the original batteries. We tested them. The battery they pulled out, the case was busted. The battery was leaking. I called the battery people. They said, well, it never would have worked if the battery was split open because the continuity was missing. There were just so many things wrong with the case. The measurements were wrong. People that tested the water for radioactivity had no training in using a Geiger counter. 2 local divers were turned away. Yet a diver from New York shows up, and they let him dive in. And, it was just a flat zero. So until somebody comes up with something better, I'm going to say that whatever went into that water was not a lantern. And the glow, if you're familiar with a railroad lantern, they're bottom heavy. It's a battery with a handle.
Oh, yeah.
Well, their whole thing was that this thing was thrown, the kids threw this thing in there to make a hoax deal, and when they threw it out, it landed handle down in silt, and it stayed that way. And then it moved around in the current. Well, there's no current in a mine strip pool. It's just a pool of water.
It just sits there.
Right. So there were so many things wrong with the case, and I truly, he was calling me, emailing me when I was doing the report because he found out I was doing it. And then after I published our report, I haven't had a word since.
It seems that a lot of your reports, you find that natural explanation for. Yeah,
and there is. There's a natural explanation for a lot of reports. But the thing is, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of good researchers out there, a ton of them, whether they're with the larger groups or with these many break-off groups that have started in the last 2 years, and there's a ton of those. The larger groups seem to work on numbers, just pile them up and get them into the database, and where the smaller groups will take a case and they'll really work it. I mean, they'll go to the end. They'll be at the library. They'll be on the Internet. They'll be on the scene. They'll be talking to witnesses. They'll be checking the weather. They'll be going back in records that, in newspapers. And that's the way you really have to do it to get an answer. Because you can just sit here and say, well, yeah, it could have been a UFO, and that's the end of the story. But when you really dig around and you go, no, well, actually, I called, I got on the NASA site and I checked, and the NASA lab says that a bolide went through that area such and such a time, which is the exact time that you reported it. So there's always an answer. But there's that 2 or 3% that I have no idea. I mean, I get pictures from people from all over the country. And look, a lot of them are misidentified birds. They really are. And then there's some, I stare at those for hours, and I try to distort them with Photoshop and bring them up with enhancing programs. I can't do it. They don't change. There are saucers. There was a lady up in Upper Pennsylvania here. It's 2 years now. She was coming. She trains police officers, and she was coming home from work, and she just said it just looked like this strange cloud. She said it was so pretty. It was a beautiful blue day, but just this one cloud right above the nuclear station, power station. So she stopped and she said, "I know you're not supposed to take pictures of the nuclear station." She said, "But I wasn't." She said, "I really took a picture of the cloud." So she downloads this thing, and she sends it to me, and she says, "Is there something in this cloud that just, and she has a little arrow pointing to it, and I blow it up as far as I can, and there's something there." I said, "But I don't know what it is." So I sent it to a researcher in England who actually studies the Mars photographs for the government. And he sent it back to me, and there were 3 objects in there. There were 3 saucers. There was a large saucer at 11 o'clock, there was one at 2 o'clock, and there was one at 8 o'clock. And the one at 11 o'clock was shooting a beam down to the one at 2 o'clock. And all inside the cloud. And he peeled off color layers, and I'm sure I couldn't afford that program, but he peeled off the layers of the photograph. And he told me the type of camera, when it was shot, what the focus was, what the settings were. I mean, he knew all that. And he says, "I don't know what they are." He said, "But there you go." He said, "You got 3 of them in that cloud above the power station," which really bothers me.
We're going to come back and take some more phone calls with you in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And our special guest tonight, Butch Witkowski, we're talking about alien abductions, mutilations, and, of course, your phone calls right here on Coast to Coast AM. Butch, is there an urgency with law enforcement or anybody about these disappearing people?
Not that we can find.
That's strange all by itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very.
Let's go to Patty in Sears Mount, Maine, east of the Rockies. Welcome to the show, Patty. Go ahead.
Good evening, George.
Hi, Patty.
Good to talk to you. I can think of 2 notable cases in the state of Maine. He was approximately in his early 20s. He was distraught over his girlfriend or something. He ran into the woods behind his house, never to be seen again. It was even televised on a show like Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
Not a trace. Nothing. And not since.
Butch, there can't be that many sickos running around picking up these people. Can there?
Right. No, I agree. I really think that there's other sinister things going on. And I'm at the point where I just, with no answers from an earthly realm, I just have to look other way, in another direction.
I mean, this could be far-fetched, but, could they be getting abducted by extra-dimensional creatures or something?
Well, yeah. A lot of people think that everything we see is interdimensional travelers. So that kind of makes sense when you kind of think about it a little bit.
We'll go out to Independence, Missouri now. Mike's with us on Coast to Coast. Hey, Mike, thanks for calling.
Yeah, George and Butch, I just want to put this in real quick because my phone's dying.
Okay.
Talk about the Dahlia case because they tried to, I think that was E.T. done because all the incisions and stuff, and there was no blood. I'd like to hear what he has to say. I'll see you. I'll be up here. Bye.
Okay. Of course, that was a case where I think the author of the book believes his father was doing it. I think his father was supposed to be a physician.
Right.
In that particular case, too. I don't know if that had any E.T. similarities. Did it, Butch?
No, I think that was just one of those sickos.
When you solve a case and it's not E.T. related, or you don't put it in that file, is that satisfying for you, or is it upsetting?
No, it's kind of upsetting. It's kind of a 50-50 thing, like the Carbondale case. I'll just use that one. It was very satisfying to find out that all the stuff in the report was actually false. And then it was unsatisfying because I don't know what went in that water. Something was in that water. The people that said the military were there the same day, within hours, And, why was NASA calling the police department, and why was the different space agencies contacting the police department when all it was supposed to be a lantern? So something going there? Yeah, but it wasn't a lantern.
Let's go to Frank. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
All right, Frank in Chino, California. Frank, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question for your guest.
Sure.
There was an incident back in Las Vegas, Nevada, where 1976 and 1979, a number of homeless people were found mutilated just like the cattle, and no one could ever give an answer for that.
I've never heard of that case, but I'd be glad if you can put me onto it.
I don't know much about it. It was a family friend that told us about it when I was a kid.
And what was the years again?
1976 and 1979. There was a group of homeless people found around Las Vegas, mutilated just like the cattle.
Oh, I will look into it. That's for sure.
Las Vegas police covered it up, and I can't say anything.
Well, we're finding, in a couple cases that we did look at, and it was just like I said before. They just have this predisposition that best left unsaid.
Would you consider it a ritual if a group of people, like a gang, said, "Let's go get these people"?
Yeah, that would be a ritual killing. But he said they were mutilated like cattle, so that takes it to another dimension there.
Yeah, it sure does.
If it, there's a really good case, Beni Mazar, Egypt, 2005. Two families are butchered, just like cattle. The same circumstance as we find our cattle, and this takes place in a neighborhood right outside of Cairo, Beni Mazar, and every man, woman, child, dogs, the birds, pets were all killed. Everything was just butchered.
Where murders are very rare anyway, right?
Right, and they blamed a retarded fellow who lived quite a few miles away, and this guy was in jail for quite a while, and now his case went to court last year. A very famous lawyer in Egypt took the case, and she got him acquitted. The guy has the mentality of a 3 or 4 year old. There is no way, the guy can't cut his own meat on his plate, so he didn't perform these kind of things to these two families. So the court acquitted him, but he had to live under police protection and observance. So everywhere this guy went, he had two cops with him. Well, then she took that back to court and then got that done and said, look, okay, no more cops but the family. So if this guy leaves the house, his family has to be with him. So she basically said, well, that ends the case with one exception. Who did kill these two families?
Who did it? Right.
And the way they did it, why did they do it? So now, was this another Brazil case? Or was just some wacko? But she said they were mutilated like cattle are in the U.S.
Very similar.
That was in her statement. Now, I've tried to contact her a number of times, but now with this Arab uprising over in the Middle East, getting a hold of her has been next to impossible. I mean, her email has changed. I tried the newspaper she was working for, where they're not even in operation. They're kind of on a shutdown until this is all straightened out. But I am going to try to get a hold of her to see where this went and to see if I can contact the police department in that area or whoever handled that and see if I can get a report. But that was another strange case.
What is the state of ufology these days, Butch?
Today, I think it's become more aware. People are more aware of what's going on. That and the fact that they all carry a camera now on their hip. We see we used to, just a few years ago, I was saying, we see so many young people getting involved with, they have degrees in law, they have degrees, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're physicists, or whatever, and you have now, just in the last year, a lot of reports I get are from retired people that have backgrounds with the military, have backgrounds with the DOD, have backgrounds with law enforcement or physics labs or aircraft companies, and they put forth some absolutely fascinating stuff. And it's just, you could talk about just their reports for hours and hours and hours. there was just a recent thing here in Pennsylvania, which was reported by John Weaver from the Pennsylvania MUFON group. Somebody was saying something about some problems or some sightings up around upper Pennsylvania, where there used to be a plane factory. They made the Piper Cub. Well, he discovered that there was also testing for nuclear stuff. So, all these little tidbits come out, and you're going like, wow. So is that stuff still buried up there or what?
Let's go to Cliff, West Cliff, Colorado. Frank's with us. Good morning, Frank.
Hi, how are you?
Good, Frank. Thank you.
My name was Butch when I was a kid.
We all were. Go ahead.
But anyway, I live in West Cliff, Colorado, and there are many, many strange things, anywhere from spiritual stuff to UFO portals and orbs. And, I mean, it's the weirdest place in the world, and I've studied it for over about 14 years now. And a lot of the stuff is just almost unbelievable. And mostly people don't want to talk about it because we rely a lot on tourism, and they think it'll scare the tourist away. But a lot of strange stuff is going on, and there's some one of the people made a movie called Strangeness in the Sandgrays, and he talks about all these a portal for UFOs, and I've experienced a lot of strange stuff, energy fields, and it's just an amazing place. And I think it's pretty indicative of a lot of this stuff that's going on now. And what I've kind of concluded is that we are some kind of spiritual being that inhabit this thing called a human body, and we're just trying to figure out and create ourselves in reality. But anyway, it's a interesting, exciting adventure living up here in the mountains with all the strangeness that's going on.
Just don't end up as one of those disappearing cases, Frank.
Yes.
Well, Frank, a lot of people, Frank, say that they are us.
Yes. Well, what's strange about Westcliff, in a way, most of the stuff that happens is of a positive nature. In other words, kids get in trouble and something comes along and bails them out. It's not like the negative energy, it's the positive energy. And, I've even had experiences where I should have died. In fact, I was basically pronounced dead, and then all of a sudden something just jumped in, and, I can't explain it because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, it is strange.
I kind of fell off of a cliff, and I should have been history, but in other words, and there's a lot of stories like that, like animal mutilations. A friend of mine had a horse mutilated, but it happens so frequent, and you can't tell anybody about it, because if you do, you'll get a knock on the door in about 2 days from somebody identifying themselves with some agency of the naval, I don't know, whatever, and they basically tell you to keep your mouth shut or you're going to be dead.
Well, now, see, that's an interesting take. Have you, Butch, ever been threatened to stop researching this?
Yes.
Tell me about it. Or what you can tell about it.
Well, about 8 months ago, I got an email from a fellow that said he had a case he'd like to discuss, and he left his phone number and gave me a time to call him. And I called, and there was no answer, an answering machine, so I left my name on an answering machine and nothing. So I thought, well, the next day I'd try again. I tried the next day, and gentleman picked up the phone, and I said I was calling about the case that he sent me sent me the email on. And he says, I'm only going to tell you this one. His exact words, I'm only going to tell you this one time. You need to forget about human mutilation. And hung up. And I called that number back right away. It was disconnected.
And he was dead serious, wasn't he?
You can't disconnect the phone that quick.
No.
I mean, I called him back instantly. He hung up, and I dialed that number, and it was disconnected. But that was the only real, what I would consider a threat. But
how about other members of your organization? Have they been threatened?
No. Okay. Nope.
All right, let's go to Oklahoma City. Michael's with us, first-time caller. Michael, you're up. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Norrie. Good morning, Butch.
Good morning, sir.
Not to get off the current topic, but Mr. Norrie, you brought up the Thunderbirds a little while ago.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share a personal experience about that.
Sure,
and after
absolutely.
I get done, I'd be more than happy to take any comments or thoughts on it off the air. But in 2004, it was the summer, I was real close to Seymour, Texas. I had headed east out of Abilene, and I think this part's important. I was driving a 77 Coupe de Ville, not a small car.
Right.
And from left to right, swooping down across this two-lane, was this large bird. And I saw it coming for, I don't know, half mile, quarter mile or so, and it swooped down right in front of the car, so close, I actually ducked. I thought it was going to hit the windshield.
Oh.
And I tell you, the body of this bird took up the entire windshield of that old Cadillac. It looked like the wings went on past the hood, and I pulled the car over to the side and kind of got out and looked as it flew off across the field. And that was, I didn't know anything about it. I had never made a report. A couple of years later, I saw something on the History Channel about Thunderbirds, and it just clicked. That's what it was, because it was bigger than any eagle, hawk, any other raptor-type bird I had ever seen.
Yeah.
And
the wingspan on a condor is anywhere between 18 to 22 feet. That's big.
That is big. Would that be something that would be native to Texas?
They have been seen in just about every part of the country, which is amazing because they're basically in California and the Northwest, but they get trapped in the thermal coming across the country. And they've been seen in Pennsylvania, they've been seen in Maine, they've been seen in Canada, they've been seen in Florida. So, reports of condors are pretty common if they get caught in a thermal. They just get caught in a thermal and they just glide. They're just gone. They just stay up there. There's no effort. The wind carries them east. But an average eagle is 14 to 16 feet with a wingspan. But on our website, I have a picture of a vulture, king vulture, with a 22-inch wingspan. He's just standing there sunning himself. He's got his wings extended. That bird is huge.
22
if you
feet.
See a heron, and we have a lot of herons in Pennsylvania. If you see a heron, and one of my researchers was just relating this to me the other day. He was had his daughter out at a lake, and she was standing on a rock, and she was just a 5-year-old. So you know how big a 5-year-old is, and he said there was a heron out there, and the heron and her were head height. They were looking at each other. So these birds are huge. There's one that I found a nest of, and I was looking up this stream, and I thought, now who in the heck could be fishing at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning? What, are they crazy? It's cold out. It was a heron fishing. But from the distance, it looked like a man. That's how tall he was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do.
I mean,
some people
big,
have thought
huge.
they were barn owls, but they're not.
But I really do think a lot of it's people are just misidentifying something. And look, you're driving a car and you see something that big swooping down on you. Man, I'd be thinking of Rodan. Remember that old movie?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
That'd be the first thing in my mind. I'd be ducking too. But
I still think it's a big creature of some type, Butch.
Yeah, it has to be something. We don't get a lot. I don't see a lot of reports in Pennsylvania. We don't get a lot. We've gotten 3 or 4 in the last year, but there are other reporting agencies. But nobody's ever got a feather, a body. It's almost like Bigfoot,
It's almost like Bigfoot, and I think that's a creature of some type.
Yeah, I mean, look, somebody said to me, well, how can something hide like that and never be found? I said, they never found D.B. Cooper.
wherever he is, probably
There's
listening
a guy
to
that
the
jumps out
show.
of an airplane with a couple $100,000 and never found him.
Nope. That is so true. So true indeed.
Could this thing be hiding in the woods? One of my researchers thinks that they, in the summertime they travel east, in the wintertime they travel west. So, they could be migratory. That's why the sightings change. You see more sightings here in warmer weather, and then you see more sightings out west, and, it's just back and forth.
Incredible mysteries. Our special guest tonight, Butch Witkowski, his website, of course, linked up for you at coasttocoastam.com. It's PAUFOsearch.com. When we come back, let's talk about what does the government really know? Maybe they're not disclosing because, well, people are being abducted. We'll be back. Well, final hour to go here. We're going to take your phone calls and special stories, alien abductions, mutilations, strange stuff. Back with Butch Witkowski in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And we're with Butch Witkowski. Butch, let's assume for a moment that government, of course, knows what's going on, that one of the reasons they do not tell us is because exactly what you've been researching, these mutilations, these abductions, that it's downright scary, and that they know that if there's nothing they could do about it, that the population would just go crazy. Possible?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. So if I'm sure there's things done in. A guy related a story to me a little while back, and he said, just imagine or just suppose this scenario that what crashed in Roswell was actually a American-built Nazi provided information saucer.
Okay, that we made.
And it had the occupants inside were maybe Mongoloid children.
Mm-hmm.
He said, what do you think the country would do? I said, they'd freak. I mean, they'd absolutely go out of their minds. So, yeah, and disclosure. Will they ever disclose? I have my doubts. I hope they would eventually. I mean, you got guys out there right now like, Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel and Stephen Bassett and
hard workers.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have been at it for years, and I mean, and I would tell all your listeners, I mean, you got to go to these guys' sites and just read what they have to say and read what they've come up with and just look at their stuff. I believe I actually met you, George, at the X conference in Gaithersburg, Maryland in 2009.
That's right.
And, Richard Dolan's and Stephen Bassett, I mean, these guys have just been at it and at it and at it, and they're not giving up, and that's a good thing. So read their books, listen to their speeches at conferences, and definitely go to their websites. There's so much information on there about disclosure. Everybody should read that stuff.
Do you think there would be panic, Butch, if government came out and said, folks, people are being abducted, they're being mutilated, they're testing people, we don't know why, we can't stop it?
Yeah, I do. I think there would be a panic. I think people would be more cautious. People would really start looking at a lot of things. There was a conference I went to where a gentleman was speaking, and he said that, he was very high up in the government, and he said that he's already, they were talking about hybrids, and he said, listen, you could be sitting across the table at a diner with one of these guys, and you wouldn't know the difference. Yeah. And I just kind of went like, wow. So after the conference, after his speech was done, I talked to him for a minute, and he says, yes. He said, they do exist. And so then I hit him up with the absolute question. I had to do it. I said, so Men in Black, are they really Men in Black? He says, yeah. He said, call them what you want. He said, there's about 4 or 5 of them sitting around you right here in this conference. And I'm like, oh, boy. I didn't want to hear that. That's the part I didn't want to hear.
Back to the phones we go. Let's go to Shirley in Bayview.